Today, we're going to jump into lighting up your outdoor adventure photography. Let's go behind the shot. Hi, welcome to Behind the Shot. I'm Steve Brazill, and this is the show where we try and get inside the mind of a great photographer by taking a closer look behind one of their shots from conception to completion and all the stories and challenges that happen in between. And today I've got a great guest lined up for you. Just a reminder that if you want to find any of the links we talk about in this show, a small sample gallery of my guest work, or any of the stuff related to this show, head to the website. It's behindtheshot.tv, not .com, behindtheshot.tv. Links are there, everything else, a little blurb that I write about my guest. And then, of course, if you're watching on YouTube, all those same links, a smaller description, are in the description on YouTube, right down below the like and subscribe buttons. And then again, on your way by, if you would, hit like, hit subscribe, turn on notifications. That way you know whenever I release something new. Speaking of YouTube, by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, every one of my videos does have chapter timestamps down in the description. Jump to any section that you want. So let's get started. First of all, if you would, please welcome to the show one of Canada's best. This is Ben Girardi. Ben, how are you, buddy?
I'm good, Steve. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure to have you. And I should mention, we don't know each other until today. I was connected with you through the nice folks over at Wonderful Machine. So I do want to say thank you to the folks at Wonderful Machine for having my back and introducing me to some amazing photographers. I'm curious, how long have you been with Wonderful Machine?
I think it's probably been about like 8 years now. I did take a break kind of in COVID kind of times just then, but then I've been with them again the last 3 years, I think.
They've always been very, very nice to me. I've had a number of guests on through them. If you don't know Wonderful Machine, head to the website for Wonderful Machine and look at some of the photographers that they represent, because they've got kind of a who's who of photography. So I want to start here. Being as how I've never met you before, and yes, we are going to, those of you on YouTube that see the title of the show and are like, get to the shot. I'm going to get to the shot, but I always start my shows with a little getting to know the photographer. I want you to understand who they are and why you might pay attention to them and put any weight behind what they say. And I want to start here because when I was looking at your site, what pops into my head describing you is a commercial outdoor photographer. Is that how you describe yourself? When people say to you, what do you do for a living? How do you describe what you shoot?
I would normally describe it as like action sports and outdoor commercial photography.
Okay.
For brands, magazines type of work.
So researching you a little bit, I found out that you kind of discovered photography early in life, high school, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm curious, the way Ben's mind works, you're in high school, somehow you get introduced to photography. What was it in that early experience that hooked you?
For some reason, when I was in ninth grade, there was a photo class, and it was weird for like a ninth grader to be able to get into it. I remember getting the opportunity. I dropped my lunch to take it, and then I was just hooked. I think it was a really good teacher. She was new to the school that year and was just really passionate about teaching. So I just had a good experience, like kind of learning, and enjoyed being in that class. I wasn't like bad at school, but I definitely didn't like it. Didn't like being there. I'd rather be doing other stuff. But that was
Yeah.
kind of one thing that I was actually excited about doing.
It's amazing what a difference a good teacher can make in any subject.
Yeah. I think and then throughout high school, she left the next year. Another guy came in who had been there to fill the position for a year. And he was like a sports photographer at the local university. So I think I saw from him it was possible. And then he was only there for a year, and they found another teacher. And she, again, was another really passionate teacher and photographer. So I think it was just this kind of combination of these three teachers just really got me hooked and showed me that it was possible to shoot photos as a living.
It's interesting because as I'm sitting here listening to you describe this, what's going through my mind is when we meet people in general, but I'm thinking in my head, it's specifically in the creative space. When we meet people that are passionate about what they do, because you used the word that the third teacher was also passionate about it. When we meet people that are passionate about what they do, it's always fascinating to me that it's not just, oh, that's interesting, right? There can be such a trigger in our own mind when we are presented with something with passion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think it's,
So your client list reads like a who's who of outdoor life. Pelican Sport, Whistler, which I've never been to and I need to go to, Gore-Tex, Head Skis, Vail. You even did an ad that's kind of up my alley because I collect whiskey. You did an ad for Talisker whiskey that you actually shot out in the snow, which I think is kind of neat. Is there or was there a moment or a job with you looking back now that was kind of that catalyst to get you to that level?
I don't think there was a specific job. I very much, when I started out, it was, there was a lot of magazines still, and like snowboard magazines. So I very much came in through a snowboarding world where you could just kind of go out with your friends, shoot snowboarding, and sell images after the fact to magazines to use for editorial. Sometimes brands would buy them. So I think it was just early on, like editors at snowboard magazines wanting to use my images just in the publication. It was like, okay, I can do this. It works. And then through
So,
that, it was making these connections at
okay.
brands. And
So that's an interesting part right there. And that's what I was about to say. There's a little bit of a delay, so I apologize if I step in too soon. But that last part you just mentioned was what I was going to go to. You suddenly had magazines or companies that wanted to use your images and brands. But you're young, you're new at this, right? You don't have that business experience in the photo world with contracts and rates and et cetera. Was there anything in those times starting out when you had people approach you about images or you approached them and they said yes? Was there anything on the business side you think that would help other people that are getting started?
yeah, I think, I mean, number one is you are running a business. That's the probably the most important thing to remember. It's easy to just be, obviously someone is going to try and get something for less, but you have to kind of remember that just going on a trip somewhere is not going to pay your rent. Um, but I was willing to reach out to people and talk to them and ask. And I met some of the editors were willing to help me. And like, if I had questions about like pricing or something else, they would kind of tell me or give me some advice of where to start. So it's been not being afraid to ask people, I think is a good place to start, and utilizing resources around you like that.
That makes sense. And having, when you said ask people, I'm a big proponent in my field of music photography. There are so many photographers that come to me or other people that I know and say, they want to use my photo for promotion or they want to use my photo for their Spotify list or on a t-shirt, what do I charge? And being able to ask that question of somebody that mentors you is such a key. I want to ask you a question I ask every one of my guests now. Didn't used to do this, and I've started doing this because the answers are interesting. In general, not just outdoor adventure action photography, in general, what makes a great photograph great?
I think a great photograph is just, it gets a reaction out of people. I think it depends on what, I mean, because a photo could be technically perfect, but someone doesn't care about what's in it. It's not great. But it could also be it could be out of focus. It could be blurry. It could be, I don't know, the composition could just not follow any of the rules of photography. And if people react to it, it's great. And I think the reaction or what you're trying to get, how trying to get people to react is not the same. Like obviously in a commercial world, you're trying to get someone to buy something. But like maybe like within snowboarding, like you're trying to document an experience and just getting people to relate or want to
Right.
go outside and go snowboarding. So like that's what it is to me, like getting that reaction
Yeah, I
from people.
agree. And I, when you're talking, you mentioned when you're shooting for a brand, you might be trying to sell something. That there is a different grade for a marketing shot from a client point of view, right? A great shot that in some way manipulates somebody to want a product versus just a great photograph, which to me is the exact thing that you just said. It can be soft, it can be blurry, it can be color inaccurate, it can be a number of different things, but if it connects with somebody. So if you take this thought process specific to what you shoot, outdoor, action type commercial photography, would the answer be the same or different?
I think it's the same. I think what changes is the what the reaction you're trying to get out of somebody is. I don't think that's the same. Like for a lot of like, for instance, just my editorial snowboard stuff. I just want to get people, for those, I want to get people excited about snowboarding. I want them to want to go snowboarding, which isn't necessarily like buying something. It's kind of engulfing themselves in a culture. But
Right.
if it's,
It, experient experiential,
yeah.
type
So I
thing.
think it applies there too. But then at the same stuff, like at the same time, like just last week we were out shooting like jackets, like we're still in the snow, but we're trying to, at the end of the day, show this experience of these people enjoying the mountains, but wearing this jacket.
Right. Lifestyle.
So
Yeah.
yeah, lifestyle, but at that point, you're trying to sell a product. So it's a different reaction you're trying to get.
So before we started, I had you write down some terms. The terms were technical execution, storytelling, creativity, impact, composition, and lighting. And what I want you to do, you can just write numbers next to them. What I want you to do is rank those in order of importance, starting with whatever would be number 6 and working your way to number 1. And you don't have to do it quick. Don't worry that we're on camera or anything. You think about this in any way that you want, take as much time as you want. Which one would be the least important of those 6?
Oh, it's a hard one. I think they're all important.
Exactly.
I'm gonna probably go with I'm gonna go with maybe impact.
Okay,
Maybe I
would
just
be
don't fully
6.
understand. Yeah, that would be number 6.
Okay. Number 5.
Um, I think create. Maybe let's go creativity.
Okay. So impact 6, creativity 5, number 4. And I love watching you process this. So those of you that are on the audio feed, I leave these breaks in there because hearing somebody think to me is so powerful, right? Those long pregnant pauses, you understand this is not easy. You understand that this is something that has to be kind of calculated between 6 terms that are all important, right? What would you put next?
I think if we're just talking a single image, I think storytelling would be next. I think if we're doing a series of images, I think storytelling is important, but obviously we're talking about one shot here. It's in general, I don't think storytelling is as important.
Explain this to me though. So what is it about a series of images it, that makes storytelling more? Is it because you have multiple images to relate that story?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So I think just with a single image, it's less. I don't know. Maybe I should put that
Okay.
higher. We're going
Yeah.
through
No,
a
that's
hard
fair
list
enough.
here.
Hey, dude, go with whatever you want. Okay. What would be number 3? You've got lighting, composition, and technical execution left.
I'm gonna do technical execution.
Okay. And then number 2 and number 1, you've got composition and lighting left.
I'm gonna change it. Can I change it? Can I go back?
Dude, you can do whatever you want. That's the beauty of
I'm
it.
gonna bump. I'm gonna put storytelling up there as number one at the very top. I changed my mind.
Okay. All right.
And then the number one is story. And then yeah, composition, then lighting, and then storytelling.
Okay. Sounds good. So storytelling is number 1.
Yeah.
Lighting is number 2. Composition number 3.
Yeah.
Okay. I
And
love it.
then
I absolutely love it.
technical execution's number 4.
Okay, cool. So let's dive into the photo. Before we dive into the photo, a couple of things. First of all, just to remind everybody, especially those of you that are watching on YouTube, this show is available as a podcast. I have 2 different feeds for the podcast. There is an audio only feed, which is what most of us think of as a podcast. There is also a video feed if your podcast outlet of choice, for example, Apple Podcasts, if it supports video, then there is a video feed that's separate from the audio only feed. In fact, Spotify only has audio support for their podcast feeds, but we creators, after we've got our audio only podcast feed in Spotify, we can actually go into Spotify and upload videos for each of those episodes. So if you're watching, or I should say listening on Spotify, be aware, my most recent 50 shows, I've got 150 or so more to do, but my most recent 50 shows on Spotify, I've also added video to it. Just makes it a little easier if you want to watch the video side. Of course, again, blog post and links are over at behindtheshot.tv. You can also find all the links that we talk about in the description down on YouTube while you're on YouTube. Yes, if you like what you're seeing, please hit like, thumbs up, subscribe, notifies, all of that type of stuff. So let's get into this shot. And before I bring it up, looking at the EXIF data, this said, and I'm going to mispronounce the name, Maury, is it Cambia or Cambilla?
It's Maori Cambesia.
Oh, Cambesia. Okay, Maui Cambesia skiing at night at Journeyman Lodge. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So before I bring the shot up, do you ever name your shots other than just what they are? Do you ever create a name, or are you one that just goes with what the shot is?
I don't name. I only if it's if I'm submitting to a contest or somewhere and it has a requirement to, but I kind of just leave it as it is, and that's just in there as an image description in the data, just to have mostly to get kind of the name of the athlete and the location in there.
So I have to dive deeper on something that you just said. If you are submitting to a competition, so you have submitted shots to competitions.
Yeah.
One of the fun things or difficult things, depending on how you look at it, for me with image competitions, whether they be local or big competitions, is naming. And over the years, when I've tried to name one of my shots, I've gone through different phases of how I come up with names. And I came up with a bizarre one that I saw somewhere, and that is look up song titles for blues songs. And it's amazing how you can find an image title out of a blues song title. How do you name your images if you are submitting them to it? For those of you, by the way, that don't do competitions, usually in a competition, the judges hear the name of the image first, and then the image comes up for them to see in some competitions. Some of them, they get them all digitally anyway. But so you're best to have a good name, catchy name that in some way telegraphs to the judges what they're about to see. How do you come up with names for your images?
Usually just kind of a 2 words to describe kind of what's in the image, like sliver of light. If it's a thin little bit of light,
Okay.
raking through a snowfield or something with an athlete in there.
Because you got to admit,
there's no process behind it. It's just kind of
you know what I mean, though, right? There are sometimes you have an image in front of you and you go, I have no idea what a good name for this is.
Yeah, most of the times that's how I.
Yeah. Tough. So tough. So let's
You
jump
can't
into
just
this
name it the
image.
file name.
Yeah, the name of the file name. It's _3742. This shot, to me, I should say, you and I went back and forth about what image we were going to pick today on a couple of different things. And then I went browsing through your site. And the best way for me to describe it is this is a shot that literally jumped off of the page, as it were, the website to me. There's something about this shot that I just needed to know more about what you were thinking and what your process, etc., was to it. So first of all, let's go through some EXIF data for those that are into the technical side of things. You're a Canon shooter, right?
Yep.
So tell me about the lens and body this was with.
This was with the Canon R5 with the 24 to 105 f4 lens.
The
Lens.
RF version, the EF or the RF?
The RF version.
Okay, so you didn't have to use an adapter. EXIF
No.
data showed this was at 85 millimeters, which is a really nice focal length for this. Your shutter information is interesting to me, even though you're using lights. So you're wide open on the lens. You're at f4. ISO in the EXIF data showed as 500. But tell me, confirm for me that the EXIF data is right. What was your shutter on this?
It was 100th of a second.
Why? Like I literally, okay, you're gonna freeze everything with the flash. I get that, but this is a heavy action shot. I would think you'd want to kind of push, closer to, 200th of a second or whatever your flash match is on the R5, which is 1/200th of a second. Your sync speed. What made you go with 100?
To be honest, I don't know if I have a specific reason for why I did. I think it was kind of this was the last shot of the evening. So I might have been, and at this point there was no ambient light left. Like everything was lit with the flash. So I kind of I was more just focused on my flash duration to freeze my action.
Right.
Not even really too worried about my shutter speed.
Okay.
Honestly.
And it did bring in, like, you can see trees in the background. And for those of you in the audio feed, I'll describe this in just a second to you. Don't worry. But there is enough spill light and ambient light to see the trees behind this ski jumper that we have in front of us. Manual mode. And EXIF data shows, by the way, pattern metering, which most people who know their camera body on a Canon use because spot metering is useless unless you're using the center focus point. But manual white balance. So when you're in this type of cold weather environment, you're using artificial light, it's nighttime. Do you set your white balance simply because you want it to match the flashes?
I mostly just set it so if I shoot a test shot, it's when I shoot the next test shot, it's exactly the same. Like
Okay.
I just kind of find, even just if you're reviewing your images on the back of the screen, it just for consistency, and you can change it all in post. And I don't have the number in front of me, but it was probably set to 5,500 Kelvin.
Okay. And actually we'll get in, I was going to say what were the lights, but we'll get into lighting in just a second. Let me do this. For those of you that are on the audio feed, I'm going to describe this shot to you. Ben, beat me up when I'm done. If I miss something, if I screw something up here, it's entirely logical that Steve would screw something up here. So if I miss something drastic, stop me and go, you idiot, you missed this, right? I'm good with that. So let's talk about this shot. As I mentioned, we went back and forth on a couple of different shots when we were looking for shots to dissect on this, to interview. Like I sometimes describe this show as interviewing the photograph. And there's something about this one when I saw it on your website that I didn't even know. Like part of it may be that when I see shots, I think to myself, how the hell am I going to describe this for audio people? And I'm not sure I can describe the intricacies of light that I'm going to try and describe to you now. But as I'm describing it to you, keep in mind that I'm describing shadow and light to the extreme. So you're in the mountains. It's deep, deep powdered snow. And one of the things that immediately leapt at me with this image is everything about the colors in this image reinforce that it's cold out. Like this could have been done so many different ways, warm or medium warm or whatever, but everything here has that kind of cool color tone to it. The snow looks absolutely fresh. There are virtually no marks in the snow that don't appear to be natural, right? There's no big footprint trails or ski trails going through. The sky, as Ben mentioned, is almost pure dark, but it's not. You can see snow-covered trees behind the skier that's jumping and the foreground. You can see the background, even though it is in darkness. And it's actually one of my favorite parts of this image is it's not over brought up. Like the shadows in the background are not over raised because, oh, I need to see those trees. I can see the trees, but it's realistic, right? Snow-covered trees in darkness. Then again, even in the background, there is this kind of nice, cool hue to it. Snow covers the ground everywhere. And by the way, this shot is almost a perfect example of rule of thirds. The snow enters at the lower left third, and it exits at the upper right third, just like that. It has a bright light coming from the bottom left corner. It's out of frame, but it's lighting the mounds of snow. They're not moguls because you have trees and you have big recessed areas, but the light is writing all of those. So the first thing as the light enters is this really super nice, bright, almost like moon crater that's there before you get to the tree. It gives it almost kind of a planet type feel to it. Then there is a snow-covered tree that is exactly on the left rule of third. There is a skier on the right rule of third. Like this thing just lays out so perfectly as you're going through this image. And again, the skier is jumping. That skier is leaping right off of one of the snow mounds, tucked up nice and tight, skis underneath him in a nice tight jump, poles going backwards and out to the sides, red jacket, black pants, just everything about this. And what really makes it is, like we were talking about storytelling and you ended up moving storytelling. This is storytelling. And I'll tell you why. Because you could come off of that jump at different speeds. But when you're jumping off of that mound and bringing an entire cloud of snow behind you, that's storytelling to me. Because I now know this person is moving, right? They're hauling and bringing quickly the snow with them. There is a second light in the upper right of the image that's lighting up the skier and the snow. And I'm guessing part of what's on those trees might be some spill from that upper right light. So it looks like two lights, bottom left, upper right. And by the way, that skier is centered so perfectly in an open spot. So you have the line of the snow, bottom left third to upper right third. You have the tree on the third, you have the skier on the third, but then the skier is placed in between the top of the frame and the bottom in that open, dark background. There is so much composition at work here that I don't even know where to go with it. Like this is almost perfectly laid out in the middle of the night. Did I miss anything I should have caught?
No, I honestly think you described it really well.
Okay.
Um,
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's pretty spot on with light placement, kind of where everything is.
So it was two lights.
Two lights, yep.
Okay, so before I get into the composition and the lighting and all of that, first, and I've got so many questions on this layout and what was in your mind at the time. First of all, tell us the story of making this.
So this was just it started as a personal project, this whole kind of shooting. And I wanted to shoot a specific photo. It wasn't this one, but I wanted to shoot a specific photo at night. kind of with my good friend Mallory. And I had the idea. I put a pitch together. I sent it to Ellen Chrome just to see if they would want to be involved, and they were down to support with lights. Um, so it kind of started as creating this other image, and I knew like, and then kind of building out from that single image. I wanted to do a whole series of. I was kind of aiming for 5 final images, and I knew one of those I wanted to be an air. Um, there was others, a how turn, a lifestyle photo, but I really wanted an air, and I wanted to kind of have that backlit snow as somebody jumps. So kind of starting around looking for a feature that would allow that to happen. So then with the other part of the images, it's more working with what you have. Like the tree there, I worked with it because it was there. It wasn't, it was more finding the spot where you could do a jump and a landing and kind of crafting around the other elements to make it a good image.
So, okay, so much to go here. So you had a shot in mind. First of all, you go to Ellen Crom with this shot in mind. What was the shot you had in mind?
That was just a pow turn, just kind of similar idea, just with the snow illuminated from the back,
So
but just doing a turn,
almost like a rooster tail of powder.
more or less. Yeah.
Okay, so and I'm a skier, but I don't do jumps like this. I would not imagine that a normal jump would have that much snow trailing behind the skier. Is it just because I don't see it backlit usually? Like, is there always
Um,
that much snow?
like in fresh snow like this, yeah. Not, I mean, if it's light and cold, there always is, but you don't normally see it if it's not backlit.
Kind of like rain. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But if you were like in like a terrain park on a mountain, you wouldn't see that much snow. But we didn't shovel. Like this is just a natural hit. We didn't build anything.
Okay, so then that brings in a couple of things because you're looking around for a spot that gives you a jump and a landing. The tree happened to be there. You've got this terrain that's in front of you. When you're picking your angle, like you're picking the spot you're gonna. Is this handheld or tripod?
I was handheld.
Okay, you're picking the spot to stand or kneel down or whatever to catch this jump above you. In your mind, you had a different shot planned. You knew you wanted 5. So this really, other than I want a jump, this wasn't that pre-planned. So in the moment, as you walk up right here and you see this untouched powder and you've got this tree and you have this angle of land going at just the right angle to land on a lower and an upper rule of third as you're looking through your camera. Are you aware of that in the moment?
Kind of like laying out the frame. Yeah. I think that's why I had such a tricky time ordering those words because composition is really important to me. Like kind of every aspect of it. Because so this wasn't the first jump we had looked at. Like we looked at a few different ones. And like where we were, we're walking through the like we're walking everywhere, we're carrying everything. So you're kind of like looking at things, oh, this will work, oh, this looks good. Because you have jumps that would work but don't look good. So it's kind of that combination of this one will work and it looks good. Kind of
So if you're aware of the compositional structure of the land,
yeah.
were you also aware, if you remember, you may not even remember, but if you remember that the tree would land on a vertical third and the mound that he was going to jump over is going to emphasize the right vertical third. Were you aware of that too?
I definitely lined it up so it was kind of that third.
Okay. Because
Um,
I'm just going to say 17 different photographers would have shot this 20 different ways. And I don't believe the majority of those would have so well designed and shot this structurally, right? From that compositional layout, which is a thing that really matters to me personally. So it's entirely possible somebody listening to this is like, yeah, whatever, whatever. But to me, the structural layout, specifically again, the tree on a third, the skier, the cloud of snow, and the mound on a third. And then this, I love that like 20-degree angle going from the bottom left third to the upper right third. I just think it's so, so well done. And then this is done handheld at 100th of a second, which is interesting to me, and the manual white balance I get. But composition wise, you're walking around, you shot other jumps, right? When you're laying out your shots, okay, the tree lands on a rule of third and the skier lands on a rule of third, but it's not just rule of thirds. It's also balance, right? So you have an anchored tree anchoring the shot, balanced by a skier that's not anchored. Does your mind go to, like there's something known as the rule of odds too, where you shoot things in odd numbers. Does your mind go through as you're framing these different compositional techniques that can be followed or not followed or broken or whatever? And do you think in balance? Like if you see something in one of your frames before you pull the trigger, do you at times think I need something to offset that or balance that? I don't know if I'm using the right terminology to make sense.
Yeah, I do. Not necessarily like specifically with this image, just with when I'm shooting, like you can kind of feel like if the image is heavy on one side. I don't know if heavy is the right word to describe it, but
That's exactly what I mean, actually. Yes, that's
yeah, like if
exactly
you're
what I
kind of
mean.
like, or like if there's like a tree splitting the middle of the frame or something, like
Okay.
I'm very much looking for that type of stuff. And the rule of odds, is that what you called it?
Yeah, rule of odds.
Like very much same thing when you're shooting. Like I'm thinking about that. I'm looking for like groups of 3 people or something.
Okay. Yeah, see, all of these things are in my head, many of them because of Rick Salmon. So Rick, if you're listening to this, thank you. Um, you've got 2 lights here. And the you're walking around, you've shot other jump shots. This is the last shot really of the night. Your light positions. So you walk up to this scene and you see the angle of the land. The tree on the left has that, I don't know what to call it, because again, this isn't like a mogul because it's a straight drop after the tree into this large recess area. So your light is lighting that up, which then causes shadow next to the tree, but then light on the other side of the tree. It causes this wonderful, the I did not mention that the bottom right corner of this frame is dark. And from where the subject is in the tree are in the 2 lights, the light in the upper right and the bottom left, the way the ground is shaped causes this wonderful soft fall off of light across the snow that's right in front of the camera and makes it look planet-like, like all the little natural bumps, little bumps. I'm not talking moguls, right? The little bumps where maybe a pine cone was covered in snow and the little recesses where something melted. It looks so planet-like. Like it reinforces that story that we are in the middle of nowhere doing this. When you walk up to this and you're looking at this scene and calculating in your head, why these 2 light positions?
So we actually came to this one because we had been up the hill. So we actually came to this one from the top. Um, so I didn't see it originally. We kind of looked at the features like, oh, I think we can jump off that. We came up to it. Kind of there's the one he's jumping off of, and just to the looker's right, there's a very similar feature. So we were able to walk out on that other one and look down and see everything from the top. And that let us see kind of like, okay, there's a landing. And I say we're using headlamps and everything's pitch black. So you're kind of just guessing a little bit. Um, so part of the first light placement is just like the terrain. Like I knew I wanted that backlight to light up that snow. I kind of started building it out with one light, and you're kind of limited. Like the hill slopes away pretty steep on the left. So I didn't really have a place to put my light, like realistically put it. So some of like crafting that is just forced around what is available terrain wise to get the light high enough to actually like kind of come down the slope and still light the skier. So I started with the backlight, and then from there built out the second light to kind of fill in shadows that were getting lost and too dark.
So you place the lights, light power wise. You thinking that I'm in your head, oh, I'm going to start at half power and I'll see what happens. Are you metering? Like you having the skier stand on that mound and you're metering him? What are you doing as far as deciding your light powers and ratios between the two lights?
In terms of metering, you kind of can't too much because you can't get to where the skier actually is. Like you can light him on the mound, like you can kind of test it on the mound, but you can't actually get a meter to where he's going to be in the air.
Oh yeah, good point. Okay.
Um, so that is the one tricky thing about a shot like this because you kind of have one try. So some of it's just like moving because like once he lands and puts a track in there, you can't go back and reshoot it.
Oh
And you have
yeah, that's right.
yeah, you only have
Yeah, you can't. This is a one and done.
it's a one and done. So some of it you're not necessarily putting too much thought into each individual one because that was why we had shot so many that night. Like we had shot another one and it didn't work. Like there was just like too much snow flying, or you're still only getting one frame when you shoot with flash, realistically. So you kind of the timing was just off. So and then you have to move everything to the next thing.
Okay,
So
and go ahead.
I started like building like the backlight. I kind of had them throw some snow in the air to get an idea of what it would look like, and mostly just building off the histogram, like on my image. You can't really, since you can't get a flash meter in there for an image like this, you base your power
So
off that.
So what are you thinking then when you set it up? Are you going, I'm going to start at quarter power? I mean, you've got to make a decision somewhere on the power.
Yeah, I probably started at half hour, just kind of to get a fast enough. Like as the flash gets lower power, it gets a faster duration. So kind of
Wow.
go in for the fastest duration you can get.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Again, it just strikes me that yeah, it's one and done. Once he jumps, this location is, for lack of a better phrase, it's no longer natural.
yeah, and I know. I mean, obviously, there's the ability to like if you were shooting like an advertisement, could shoot a plate of the snow
Right.
and do more than one jump. That's always a possibility.
It's not as
But
fun
in
though.
terms of like the ethics of shooting like skiing or snowboarding, you're not going to remove a track from like in post production.
It yeah, just so good. So, okay, but there is a chance that when you do the actual jump, light was too hot one side or the other. What's your normal post processing workflow? First of all, are there any apps that you can't live without?
Um, just the basic like Creative Cloud. I think
Photoshop,
like that's
Lightroom.
in Photoshop, Lightroom, sometimes
Okay.
Capture One, depending.
Are you Capture One instead of Lightroom?
I'm kind of both.
Oh, interesting. What about, do you use Photo Mechanic, anything like that?
Oh, and Photo Mechanic. Yep, I forgot about that one.
Okay. Love Photo Mechanic.
Yeah, I ingest everything into Photo Mechanic, and then I call them in Photo Mechanic, and then I bring them in. I just have such a history of Lightroom, but I'm trying to transition, so that's why the multiple.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. That's why I asked the question, actually. Perfect. So,
Yeah,
what might you have done to this shot?
it would have been very basic. Um, adjust the contrast, maybe a little bit down with the highlights, a bit up with the shadows, because some of the shadows in the back on those back trees would have been pretty dark. Um, but not much. Maybe a little bit of color, a little bit of adding blues, like in a color grade to kind of the shadows. But for the most part, it's kind of right out of camera.
So, because the blue hue here is so perfect,
Yeah,
right?
that definitely is a
This,
little bit of blue in the color grading.
yeah, it it adds so, and it's if you're listening on audio, it's hard to explain how subtle it is. Like you notice the blue hue, but it's not, concert lighting blue hue, right? I mean, it's so natural. Like this is true color grading, cinematic almost color grading in giving me a feeling. It's again, this is all that storytelling. I'm glad you moved that to the top because I see it so much in your work. Is there anything about this shot that anything else about this shot that people should know about?
Um, well, the one thing to remember is that we're in the dark and like we walk there. So like you have the modeling lights and that's the only way the skier can see. So as soon as the light flashes, they get hit with a super bright thing, like blast of light to their eyes. And then it's just back to kind of like a dim modeling light. And there's no other light around. So you're kind of riding out. So that's a kind of an important thing to remember, especially with the night stuff, is that you are doing everything in the dark. We're in the middle of nowhere. You're not actually able to see what you're doing.
Your skier has to ski down the hill with, so you had the modeling light on before the flash so he can at least see where the mound is that he's going to hit.
Yeah. So there's the modeling lights stay on with the lights I was using. So like when you fire the flash, the modeling lights stay on afterwards, but they're still not very bright compared to like the flash that would just gone off.
Isn't there a possibility that flash would kind of freak out their eyes a little bit to the point where when the flash duration was done, they would have difficulty seeing their landing?
Yeah. Yeah.
He says so confidently. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of, I mean, it's working with someone who's like, he could land that jump without like being able to see.
Except for the
Like
tree.
yeah, but I mean, the tree is, I mean, the direction he's going, he would never have hit that tree.
Okay.
I think that's because he lands past it.
Wait, he cleared the tree?
He doesn't go over it, but he goes like further down the hill from it.
That's what I'm saying. So he would land like down here?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm correct then. He is hauling pretty good.
Yeah, he's going pretty fast.
Okay. Wow. Well, dude, I just got to tell you, I love all of your work. And for those of you on the video feed, I've been popping up lower thirds whenever Ben's on camera so that you can see his site. But at the end of the show, we will also say his website, his Instagram. You can also go to the website behindtheshot.tv to see exactly, all of his links. But all your body of work, like seriously, is so good. I love what you do. Your Gore-Tex stuff. Again, the Talisker whiskey one was interesting to me because I collect whiskeys and seeing that kind of a campaign for Talisker was really, really fun to me. Love your work. Thank you so much for sharing how this shot is made.
Yeah, thank you for having me on and letting me talk about a bit about it.
Oh, we're not done yet, though.
Oh.
We're going to switch gears, and it's time to go into a speed round. I'm going to ask you some questions. Whatever first pops into your mind, that's what you answer.
Okay.
Okay. Your top cold weather photography tip, because that's one of the things is you're photographing in extreme conditions. So what's your top cold weather photography tip?
Embrace it. I think just like when it's cold, it looks cold. Like -30 looks like -30 Celsius looks cold. So you can kind of lean into that, or like really strong winds to me add something to the image that you can't fake it.
Can't
So
manufacture.
kind of
Okay.
utilizing those conditions.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I love it. Biggest photo mistake you've made or almost made?
That would probably be negotiating like contracts or bids or giving up usage when I didn't mean to. I've definitely like missed focus on shots or something, but I don't think that's too major. But
I
the
think
business
you may
side of
be
it.
the I think you may be the first one that ever mentioned something on the business side. Like I've had people say I went out to do a job and realized I didn't have a card in the camera. But the business side, I think, is a critical one. I'm glad you actually mentioned that. And that is sometimes we make mistakes purely on your example is perfect. I gave rights that they didn't need, that I could have charged a separate fee for, a separate licensing fee for those rights. That's actually a really good one. We talked a lot about compositional stuff, and we talked a lot about different compositional rules. Do you have a favorite composition rule? And if so, what is it?
Rule of thirds,
Okay.
I would say.
Favorite band or performer?
So I kind of just on the Spotify Discover Weekly, whatever it gives me. Right now, it's in kind of like a rock and roll kind of like 90s rock kind of
All
thing,
right.
but then all over the place.
Favorite drink?
Probably coffee.
Favorite movie or TV show?
Um, Snowboard movie. Probably Shakedown.
Oh, okay. Interesting one. And last question. Is there any photographer out there that you think more people should know about and follow?
This kid Asami, I think it's Kiyuka. I think is how you pronounce his name. He's like a young kid. He's 19, I think. He's a snowboard photographer from Vancouver, and he's just so passionate and hardworking. And it's cool to see some like a young kid who's that fired up and like putting in the work to like get better and make it happen.
Perfect. I will put a link in the blog post and in the description on YouTube. Ben, again, thank you so much for doing this. People that want to find you, run through your social media and website type stuff.
Either you can get me on my Instagram at Ben Girardi or on my website at bengirardi.com. I have a Facebook, but don't really use it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. The accounts are still there, but I abandoned Facebook a long time ago. And actually, I just gave up X recently and have moved mostly to Blue Sky for that type of social account. Ben, again, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it so very much. And again, thank you to the folks at Wonderful Machine for introducing us.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks to them for connecting us, and excited to talk about this one.
Yeah, such a great shot, such an amazing image. All the links that I mentioned, again, you can find over at the blog post, behindtheshot.tv. Find this episode. There's a bit I wrote about Ben, all the links that we mentioned, and links for you to go follow Ben, small sample gallery of his work. And if you listen to the audio version of the show, the photo is actually there so that you can go see it. Of course, everything is on YouTube too. The blog post that I write about my guest, I can't put in the description on YouTube because they have limits on how long it can be. But there's a small description. All the links that we mention are in the description on YouTube right down below. Like and subscribe. Hit them. If you like what I'm doing, please, if you would, give it a thumbs up. Or for that matter, wherever you're watching it, whatever your outlet is of choice, if you're doing this as a podcast viewing or listening, if you drop a 5-star review, that would be great. And if you don't like it, I totally understand. My apologies, but I do thank you very much for giving it a shot, and hopefully it did work for you. Again, as always, thank you to my guest, Ben Girardi. If you are not following him, you definitely should. Make sure you join us next time as we try and get inside the mind of a great photographer by taking a closer look behind the shot.